Aston Villa 2, Everton 0. A thoroughly depressing night at Villa Park on our return to the Midlands. Paddy Boyland's alongside me. Paddy, it just felt like we picked up where we left off at the low points of last season. You and I did a few away trips. I'm thinking Watford, I'm thinking Southampton, I'm thinking Brighton. All of this story we seem to have seen before. I mean, first things first, what did you make of it in general?
Well, it's obviously a really disappointing result. I think before the start of play, if somebody had offered me a point, I still wouldn't have shook hands on it. Everton should be going there, particularly a side with top six aspirations, as we're led to believe, should be going there to win a game of football against a newly promoted side. And I don't really buy the stuff about it being their first game at home and everything else. You go there with superior players, supposedly, with a superior manager, and look to get the 3 points. They actually did start quite well, Everton, I thought, and it's the same old problems time and time again that I think undermine. So far this season, the top end of the pitch haven't really clicked at all, and again we saw that tonight. They almost look like foreigners playing together. There's no kind of interplay or very little in the way of movement and kind of the interchanging that we saw at times last season when Everton played so well, and then of course squandering chances. I'm not saying that Everton deserved the point, because I don't think they did. They were abject in general play. But if you look purely at chances created, I think that there's an argument that Everton created the better chances. They're just not putting the ball in the back of the net. Now, football rewards teams that are clinical. That's the way it works. Yeah. So Villa took their chances. The first, I think they took superbly well. The second was a good goal on the counter. So they deserve the 3 points and move on. But it's a bitter blow. It's a bitter pill to swallow for Everton, given how confident we were coming into this game.
Yeah, and I think that that optimism that we had going into it superseded how we've actually played so far this season. I think, you look at the performance at Palace, I thought was bang average, for want of a better term. The performance against Watford was a little bit cumbersome as well, and I used that word to assess the first half after that initial 15-minute burst, where I thought we could have definitely taken advantage of Aston Villa's tepid start. I thought they were very cautious. I thought they allowed Everton to play in front of them. Gomez was on the ball quite a lot. His game just deteriorated throughout the whole 90 really, and almost felt sorry for him towards the end, because literally nothing was happening to him, despite the fact that his play with Schneiderlin was never anything more than a 15-yard square ball. There was no penetration from either of them. You don't expect that from Schneiderlin, but you'd expect a lot more from Andre Gomez. They get the goal. It looks a little bit sluggish from all concerns really. Some naivety in the middle of the pitch really as well, because I think we give away a free kick and Grealish takes it really quickly. Someone just needs to simply stand over the ball there, and quite funnily enough, after that, Bernard was one of them. Every single time the referee blew for a Villa free kick, one of our players would run and sprint and stand over the ball. And but it's after the Lord Mayor's parade, isn't it? Nothing's happening there. In regards to that opening 15, that's where the positives lie in this game for us really. Felt on the right hand side there was something developing between Richarlison and Coleman, but it always seemed to be the latter that gets in behind the fullback, and time and again we've seen it throughout his career. It's been a criticism. We know he's been a fantastic servant and everything else that goes with that, but he just can't put a ball in, Paddy, at crucial moments. It's that dink. There's no conviction, and he can't put his foot through the ball, nor can he wrap his foot round it. And again, got into some really promising positions and couldn't find the blue shirt. You're
right. There was a hint at some promise between those two. I thought for the first 15 or 20 minutes or so, Richarlison was better as well, kind of driving at the opposition defenders and picking up bits of space. But Coleman assumed decent positions. I think there was one lovely pass from Schneiderlin in behind the fullback, and it's either the decision making or the final ball that often goes awry with him, and that's obviously a problem that's cropped up before. It's not something new with Seamus, and for all his effort and endeavour, he's never been a technically minded footballer. He's not been a particularly intelligent footballer in terms of his nous and the way he plays the game. So again, coming back to this idea of Everton being slightly impotent at the top end of the pitch, not having the players to make the difference. I still think there's a huge issue, by the way, with Gylfi Sigurdsson,
Yeah.
and what his presence does both for the attack but also for the midfield as well. And at times in the second half, Everton looked second best in that particular area. But just going on to after starting well, I think going on to the Villa goal, what was really apparent for me was that the only threat that they had and that they were creating came from those fast transitions through the lines quickly, and that's where you see the absence of Idrissa Gueye. That's where you notice just how important he was at being quick across the ground and snuffing out those attacks, and without him we did lack a little bit of savvy. We didn't stand on the ball and stop the free kick. We didn't have anybody to cut down the pass into midfield, and because of that we looked quite ragged soon. And obviously one of the defenders switches off. I've not seen a replay, but I think it's probably Michael Keane, allows Wesley to run all the way around him, and those two were given a particularly Keane, but also Mina to a lesser extent, were given a pretty torrid time by Wesley. He was kind of physically superior and bullied them a little bit, and that's the difference in the end. I put a half time on Twitter that it's 1-0 to Villa, and both sides have kind of had equivalent chances. If anything, I think Calvert-Lewin's is a better chance than the one that Wesley scores from. Wesley obviously converts his, Calvert-Lewin doesn't, and for me that's the story of the game, even though there are a multitude of other problems with the Everton performance. I
want to move on to Calvert-Lewin because he'll be a little bit more than a footnote on many people's minds in this game. Now, personally speaking, and I know you're pretty much like-minded with this, I'm of the opinion that Calvert-Lewin often gets too harsh of a time from many fans, given firstly his age and also his role and what he's asked to do in the side, and I'm not necessarily sure that's to score goals. Nonetheless, he's Everton's striker and his job should be to score goals, and I think that is where there's a bit of a conflict between what either his manager or the general tactics that we enforce on a game dictate, or Calvert-Lewin's impotence up front. Now, that chance falls to him, and obviously we're at the opposite end of the pitch, and I asked at half time, was it as gilt edged as it looked to us? A bit of a mixed response really. A lot of people saying that it was a good block, but I've seen a still of the point of contact when he comes to hit it. He chooses to side foot it first of all, probably the correct choice, because a placement there normally would go in from 11 yards, 10 yards out, but there's half of the goal open. The two Villa defenders and Tom Heaton have moved to one side, and it just lacks composure, even though he's shaped up for a composed finish. So I've made the argument, just put your foot through it and get any sort of height and it probably goes in. He toiled for me throughout the game, Paddy. I thought Tyrone Mings got the better of him mostly throughout the whole 90 really, and it, as much as we wished it to have improved throughout the game as the game wore on, even Moise Keane's introduction in the second half didn't do anything to improve Calvert-Lewin's game. Is it now time Moise Keane has to start in front of him?
It's a really difficult question, because I do think Calvert-Lewin has something to offer, and I think he will still play a big role this season. If you look at what we saw here tonight at Villa Park, then the answer probably is yes, and sooner rather than later you need to see Moise Keane start. I think it's not even necessarily just the criticism of Calvert-Lewin. I think Keane just looks livelier, a little bit more clinical, makes things happen a bit more. Even in the short period of time he was on the pitch, he creates 2 or 3 opportunities for teammates with his quick footwork and getting away from defenders. So I think Silva's just a very cautious manager, and what he does often is allow players time before they come into the setup. This result might make him change his mind sooner than he would have done otherwise. I think he might now look at this and go, a 2-0 defeat away at Aston Villa is particularly disappointing for a side that has spent the money that Everton have over the last few seasons, a side that want to do what Everton want to do, and something might have to change there. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if very quickly Iwobi's up to speed and very quickly Moise Keane's up to speed, and we see those two starting at the top end of the pitch, because the current front four, as I said, isn't creating enough threat. They're not taking the chances when they present themselves, and that leaves Everton open. Even after a positive start here, that left Everton open to the sucker punch at the other end, and like we say, Villa were more clinical and deserved that win.
Yeah, I think your point on Sigurdsson a little bit earlier on was pertinent as well, to be honest, because it felt like he was a man in the middle of everything that just didn't seem to collect the ball enough. He didn't seem to turn enough. He didn't seem to try and find our forward players.
I think at his worst, he's a little bit like a deer in the headlights.
Definitely.
And everything kind of just goes past him pretty quickly. And even if he touches the ball, it kind of slows down the move and everything else. Now, Sigurdsson stays in for his goals, and I think that's what you have to stress. Last season, he scored and he created, and that's why I think, with Everton not scoring that many goals, he kind of keeps his place almost by default. But there is something to be said for sacrificing him occasionally and seeing what can happen. I thought Iwobi was the one spark. He was the one that kind of made things happen. Very unlucky with the one that hits the post. And that's where Sigurdsson's presence becomes a little bit of an issue, because, I mean, we talk about systems and trying to define systems. Is this a 4-2-3-1? Is it a 4-3-3? I mean, for me, it can't be a 4-3-3 because Sigurdsson doesn't play like a midfielder in his positioning. He doesn't drop back enough. Is it a 4-2-3-1? Well, I don't know, because he almost plays alongside Calvert-Lewin. And I know what Calvert-Lewin's doing. Calvert-Lewin's holding the ball up and missing a chance and trying to make things happen. But Sigurdsson, like I say, I think the deer in the headlights analogy, I think for me, that kind of summed up tonight at the very least. And he obviously hasn't had a very strong start of the season either.
No, and I think you've summed it up perfectly with that analogy. But I also think that if he comes out, does the number 10 role have to go with it? And will Silva opt? Well, would you opt for a 4-3-3 in place of no number 10 if Sigurdsson's the one that comes out, or do you think that an Iwobi or Bernard is somebody who can operate in that role a little bit faster than what Gylfi can? We know his qualities, we know what he offers the side. Simply put, in the first 3 games, none of that has come to fruition whatsoever. You get work rate from him, but that's not what he's in the team for. He's in the team to assist and score goals. None of that looks like it's forthcoming right now.
And if he doesn't do that, then I don't think he offers that much. There's the pressing and his ability to kind of fit into the system in that regard, but apart from that, in the rest of general play, he's not receiving the ball enough, he's not making things happen enough, he's not passing the ball enough. And I just think when Everton need him, he kind of goes a bit missing, and it happened at Crystal Palace as well. Like I say, he scores goals and he normally creates goals as well, so that's where the crux of the issue lies for Silva. But it's a difficult issue to solve because the winning formula is not there in that top end of the pitch, and like I said, Everton are vulnerable as a result.
Yeah, and you know, it adds to that the fact that defensively we've been so strong, yet you know the goal scoring department remains at 1 after 3 games against opposition that you'd think we should be bagging, you know, at least 3 or 4, maybe even 5 after. Well, would that only be asking for 2 a game, wouldn't it, in the first 3 games? And we've scored 1 goal, so when you do concede, it matters all that more, doesn't it? When you're not creating chances and there's no free flowing football amongst the front 4. But Silva did go on and change it. I was. To be honest with you, I lost my head at half time that he did not make any substitutes at all. I thought it was a ridiculous thing to do. I felt that when he did introduce them, it felt, again, going back to last season, those panic modes that he used to enter against certain opposition in certain games where he'd just think, well, I just need to throw the cavalry at this and hope that something clicks. It didn't feel like there was any rhyme or reason behind what he did. First of all, Calvert-Lewin doesn't come off in those first 2 substitutions. He takes off Bernard and Sigurdsson for Keane and Iwobi. And I look at those changes and I think, well, okay, you may have gone like for like. You may want to switch things up and put the 2 up front with Calvert-Lewin and Keane, but then what have you got in behind them? Does Gomez then push up a little bit, try and affect the game a little bit more? But again, it just felt slow. It felt like the ball wasn't getting out to our wide players enough. When it did, Villa were able to double up. I felt that when Walcott come on, he made it even worse, obviously compounded by the miss that he has at the very end of the game. You know, if there's a miss that happens in a football match, or if there's a chance like that comes about in the last 5 minutes of a football match, you do not want it falling to Theo Walcott. And it saddens me to say that because he's a Premier League, 300 odd games in the Premier League. He's an England international. He should know a hell of a lot better what to do in those situations. He just throws his side foot at it, doesn't get his knee above the ball and blasts it over the bar. I thought he could have brought it down myself. And then those changes, though, I don't think the influence that Silva wants or the effect that he wanted was necessarily there. With the introduction of Keane, he still didn't get the ball enough. He showed a few times, and there was one point, I think, the first touches he gets on the ball, he gets the defenders on the turn, runs at them, and something happens Why it's taken us to 60 minutes to decide that that's the time to try and get somebody on the pitch who can do that is infuriating as somebody who drives to all of these places.
Yeah. I think the interesting thing for me, and it was something that we saw last season, was that Silva makes changes when he thinks he's lost control of the game. But actually, Everton lost control of that game as soon as Villa scored.
Yep.
And it should have been on 45. It should have been Iwobi and Moise Keane on. Probably in place of Sigurdsson and Calvert-Lewin. He obviously, in the end, goes on 60 minutes. He goes what is effectively 4-4-2. The issue, though, is that when Villa score, they drop so deep that everything goes sideways and everything crosses into box from wide areas. Now, if you're Tyrone Mings, it must be 6'5", 6'6".
Yeah.
The one thing you want Everton to do is to get the ball wide to Seamus Coleman to put cross into the box, because you'll eat them up all day. And that's why the first goal was so important here, because Villa, if Everton had scored it during the spell of dominance, Villa would have had to come out, and then you can slide the balls into the channels in the second half for Moise Keane and Iwobi. As it was Everton having to make all of the running. Villa were quite content and compact in their kind of block in front of the defence, and Everton didn't really threaten, save for a couple of chances towards the end. The Walcott misses obviously terribly. He should be scoring that 9 times, maybe even 10 times out of 10.
Or anybody else on the pitch.
Or, anybody else on the pitch for that matter too. And like I say, I think Iwobi's unlucky with his on his weaker foot. It coming back off the post. They were their own worst enemy tonight, both Silva and the team themselves. I don't think the balance was right in that midfield still either, with Gomez, Schneiderlin and Sigurdsson doesn't seem to have the right blend of attributes. It's maybe not powerful enough, it's not quick enough, it's not aggressive enough at times as well. We do kind of hissy fits, stamping on people or kicking the ball away, or the kind of stuff that got Schneiderlin sent off the other weekend.
Well, Gomez does it himself, doesn't he, and gets booked?
Well, Gomez does it himself, but none of the kind of the attributes that Idrissa Gueye brought to the table last season. Again, that's something for him to revisit. The front 3 or 4 needs work as well. And after a good start, Yerry Mina and Michael Keane had their poorest game so far of the season probably by some distance.
And of course, those two you'd expect to shine against a forward line that had a big lad up front who essentially likes to throw people about a bit. It feels like a game that they should be comfortable with. I thought he was outstanding, Wesley.
He played well,
in certain parts of it, particularly for the second goal. I mean, why he's allowed to turn around, I've absolutely no idea. I think that was maybe a last resort from our defenders, having tried to basically get up his backside and do something, or maybe out-strength him to get the ball back to our players. But I just want to finish on this midfield issue, Paddy, because it looks like something that could be a lingering thing that could develop to be even worse, because you look at the options in that area in the absence of Idrissa Gueye. Gabaman I thought was fine against you'll have to excuse that pronunciation because I know you want to do your mad French accent. But yeah, I feel he'll take time to adapt, as we know. You've got Tom Davis, who just seems to be out in the wilderness right now. I thought that might well have been a game for him possibly to come in when you saw how laboured that midfield become with Schneiderlin and Andre Gomez. But simply put, your point about Idrissa Gueye is fantastic, but what do you do to change things in that midfield without him there? Because to me, Everton can't play games like that with a flat midfield. Obviously Gomez is in the side to influence it from an attacking point of view. He's playing deep as it is. Schneiderlin I thought was poor anyway, and every pass he got seemed to go backwards too. There wasn't any penetration from him.
Yeah, sideways or backwards. Apart from the one in
behind. And then I look at what else we have to offer there in that area in terms of getting the ball to Sigurdsson. Is there possibly a shout to put Sigurdsson a little bit deeper maybe and be that person that Gomez was supposed to be tonight, and be in the link between going from the defenders or Schneider and all the fullbacks to get the ball?
Is that link player not meant to be Tom Davis?
Well, that's another massive question that comes from this, and he, like I say, he seems to be out in the wilderness now. What we were saying on the way up here, weren't we? You think he's maybe 5th choice?
Yeah, 4th, 5th choice. 4th,
5th choice in this side now, and probably a game that was crying out for somebody to come in and do what he does, which is carry the ball forward and look for a forward pass. Gomez, I mean, it was probably his worst performance in an Everton shirt, and we saw a lot of them last season.
I think he needs legs alongside him. I think actually he's good on the ball, and at his best he can dictate the tempo of a game. But I think his shortcomings are that he's not good defensively, and he needs a partner in there that can kind of sweep up after him. And that's why I think Gay and Gomez worked so well at times last season during that really good run towards the end of the campaign. But what I would like to see now from Silva, and I think this was the challenge that has been brought about by Idrissa Gueye's sale, I would like to see a solution that's not necessarily just like for like, or we played with 2 holding midfielders last year, so we're just going to play with 2 holding midfielders again. It may well be that the solution, and I think this is the case, may well be that the solution to replacing Idrissa Gueye is to actually do something entirely different in that part of the pitch and look for something altogether more fluid, where you've maybe got 3 guys in there who can all do, you might have 2 box-to-box midfielders and somebody that sits. At the moment, I don't think Gomez and Schneiderlin works particularly well, and you've got a few lads that are bedding in. Fabian Delph, I think, will quite quickly come onto the radar as well, won't he, for that nous and experience. At times Everton looked a little bit unintelligent in there, a little bit clueless. So they're going to need to work on that. They really are, because they'll face, John McGinn played well tonight, but they'll face a lot better midfield than Aston Villa. Aston Villa are a poor team, all things considered. Yeah,
completely agree with that assessment. There's work needs to be done. We have a 9-day break now before we play again, which is Wolves next Sunday.
I'm going to Lincoln.
You're going to Lincoln. I completely forgot about that one. Moise Keane has to start. They all need to come in for that game. And then, of course, it's back to the Premier League action next week. It feels as if a massive chance has been missed once again, given the opposition that we face in that run that looks, ever more dreadful on the horizon in December. Let's hope we've got things sorted by then. But in regards to content over the weekend, there'll be a mailbag cropping up along the way somewhere. Monday we'll have Subs Weekly, I think, when Matt's back from yet another stag do. But yeah, try your best to enjoy the weekend blues, because
forget
about this. Forget that Everton have played. Just treat it like an international break, and we've got another game to come. Hopefully some progress in the League Cup, and check out the blueroomefc.com for all the rest of the content we've got coming up this week, and we'll see you post Lincoln, or someone will anyway.